So we're at the Super Bowl post-mortem live here on YouTube on a Monday. And I don't want to talk about the game. I want to talk about the media end of it. And I deliberately waited a while before coming on. And by the way, welcome to Rich Lieberman live on YouTube. And of course, to be watched, observed at a later date for those of you who are not watching me now live on YouTube on the day after the Monday Super Bowl post mortem. Now, I watched the game and I deliberately wanted to see and hear mostly the Bay Area media, specifically KNBR, which is the 49ers flagship radio station in the Bay Area. Now, a little background. I'm not a fan, as I have said so many times here and elsewhere, with regards to Greg Papa and Tim Ryan. I did not listen to them. I've said my piece about them. I'm not a fan. I think that Greg Papa is way over the top. I acknowledge the fact that he knows NFL football, he knows the game. That's not in any kind of disagreement. I don't like his style. I don't like his touchdown call. It's just not my cup of tea. Same thing with Tim Ryan as a color analyst. Although he too knows the game, I cannot stand the histrionics, as I'll call it. I heard highlights of their calls and all that, and it still continues and gets even worse. So I listened and watched the CBS broadcast. I like Jim Nance, and I thought Tony Romo's getting a lot of negative, but he did a very good job on this broadcast. He's can call plays in advance. He knows analysis. Gave you a pretty good. Let's face it, it's entertainment too, right? I think Tony Romo was terrific in my book. Jim Nance, steady, pro, did it all. So watch that. Listen to the national radio broadcast with Kevin Harlan and Kurt Warner. Just a fabulous radio breakdown. There was a little bit of a delay in the radio broadcast, which had plays earlier, and then the television broadcast. But I turned that down, up and down periodically. But Kevin Harlan is superb, very crafty and entertaining, and knows what he's talking about, kind of a thing. So he was great. As was Kurt Warner, who just gets phenomenal. He knows the game, having played it once. Great quarterback, and knows nuances, and was really, really solid on the Super Bowl broadcast. Called into question some of the various decisions that befalled Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the 49ers. Okay. But I want to talk more about the post-game, post-mortem. And I'm critical of KNBR because they make it easy. So I listened immediately after the game, and I watched the Carnival Act on NBC Sports Bay Area, where it's just ridiculous. And again, these post-game shows, especially when they're originating from Las Vegas, where it's just complete buffoonery on display. I wasn't impressed with NBC Sports Bay Area and their various hosts and supposed alleged insiders. Okay, so I really kind of tuned that out when I knew what was taking place. And you don't get any information, you get more guys putting their heads down, and really nothing new that you could watch and learn of. Not that you're looking for any kind of investigative pieces, but you want a little bit of analysis, a little bit of what took place. You didn't get that. So then I went to the KNBR, which has a post-game show on in the form of John Lund and former player, um, uh, whose name escapes me, but you had John Lund and you had um, one of the worst I've ever heard. I'm sorry for forgetting him too. Oh, Adam Copeland, Copey Copes, Copadopes, Copesamopes. It was pathetic. Look, they're in Vegas. They're inside the stadium. And they're supposed to give you a little bit of analysis of what we just saw. And obviously, it was a game that, if you're a 49ers follower, really tough loss, lots of things taking place, lots of questionable calls regarding the coach and, scheming in various plays during the game. And, obviously there's injuries and all that kind of stuff. But it just was, they come on and they sounded, and particularly Lund and particularly Adam Copeland, who does the post game, pre and post for KNBR. And they were originating live from Vegas. This guy Copeland, he sounded like a fan. He even admitted he was walking around the stadium. He said countless times how bummed he felt and how awful he felt, which would have been fine to some degree. But then he kept saying it, and he kept saying it, and he called it a doggone shit attack. He didn't say shit attack, but you could tell what he was saying. And just went on and on and on. They sounded like, and they were intimating that they were drinking to kind of hide their sorrows and all that. It was pathetic. But they went on and on. This was like for 2.5 hours. And they took calls, and anybody who made any kind of sense was cut off quickly, right? And therefore you had these one jock and two other morons, basically. Sorry, that's the apt word. So that was after the game. And I listened to some of the national shows, ESPN and Westwood One. I tried to get sign of a consortium of various or a consensus and a of some of the various national shows, and I kind of knew that they were going to pile on Kyle Shanahan, and they questioned some of the calls and that kind of thing. I wasn't really looking for that end because I knew sports wise there was going to be that kind of criticism, right? So this morning I put on KNBR, and oh, by the way, we'll get to that in a second. One major point here, but we had the lovely moronic, speaking of morons, Murph and Marcus on KNBR, their morning zoo show, what kind of a thing. And it was a bunch of two guys, one young guy, the other Murph, Brian Murphy, who acted as if he'd lost a son. And it was just phony. And, there was like this really disingenuous kind of talking and grown men crying kind of they weren't literally crying, but you had that kind of theme. And it was pathetic as usual. And they didn't add anything. And, again, this is KNBR. This is your alleged sports station. And having complete idiocy and banality and incompetence on a morning show, right? And again, nobody is angry. This is sports. It's not life and death. They made it sound like it was life and death, and there were references, chronic references about, losing a son and crying, and it was just beyond pale. No analysis, no reflection of what took place other than, 9 million different reasons of what they should have done and this and that. And you expected that, but nothing new. So we had that. We had Brian Murphy in his usual banality and his talked about what he saw at the game. He watched it in his house and, referenced various family members. Just your usual typical Brian Murphy crap. if you know what I mean. If you have followed me in the past on this channel or on my 415 Media blog, you know how I feel about Smurf and anyway. Okay. Then we get to Greg Papa at 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday, and the imbecile John Lund, who likes to use various phrases. He repeats himself 20 times. I'll get to that in a second. But I want to talk about this because it's funny in a way, and I'm not being serious to some degree, but I will tell you because I've listened enough. I call it the curse. These guys all postseason, they were talking, well, we're going to have that parade on Market Street. We're going to have that parade. They kept talking about it and talking about it. Guys, why don't you wait until the 49ers win the Super Bowl? That would be nice. Everybody thought, including myself, that this would be the year that they'd finally, after a 30-year drought, that they'd get to a victory in Vegas and that they would beat the very formidable Kansas City Chiefs. Didn't happen. But they kept talking about the parade down Market Street. We heard about two things mostly during the week. We heard about the fact, to be very blunt, about this parade that was going to happen even before the team had won the game against Kansas City. And we also centered on who was drinking more and who got laid, whether it was Greg Papa or John Imbecile Lund. I don't like John Lund. He's a moron. He is a radio gypsy. He travels from city to city and gets jobs because he falls into bed, metaphorically speaking, with various program directors who fear him because he gets spicy information, and they put him up as a person, whoever knows what, in what capacity, because all he ever says is, I'm going to get into a ton of information. Like you said, in which he references his radio wife and superior, Greg Papa. We're going to get into a ton of conversations, repeats that. On his analysis of what had happened in Vegas, the actual game, he must have said low hanging fruit about 20 times, just in about 5 minutes alone. So we didn't get any analysis. We had Greg Papa again talking about how much he drank and intimated about how the 49ers suffered all these injuries where they were staying, where they practiced. And basically almost, again, intimated that they may have won the game or at least would not have had all the injuries that they had if they hadn't been practicing on this soft field. We've heard about that all week long. But Papa chose to bring it up again and again and again and again and again. Okay? So we had that. We had, the talk about the parade on Market Street. And this is something about the parade on Market Street that these morons have been saying for the last 5 years. That's why I call it a curse. Because obviously the 49ers have had some issues closing the deal on winning a Super Bowl or winning a championship game. And Papa many a times referred to himself as we, almost intimating that he was a player on the team. Well, in fact, he is paid by the 49ers. So he is part of the team in that regard. But we heard it moment after moment after moment. Did we get any insight? Not really. Did we get any analysis of the game? Oh, yeah, they talked about various plays and questionable strategic scheming, as they call it, and planning by the coach. But other than that, we didn't really get any kind of real analysis other than Papa's various activities in Las Vegas and how horrible it was that he and the team had to go on a bus and travel from their hotel 45 minutes each way from the practice field to the actual hotel in Henderson, which is a suburb right outside of Las Vegas. That we heard a gazillion times. And John Lund, who repeats himself ad nauseum, doesn't give you any insight, talks about his own drinking, talks about his own Vegas escapades, and repeats these phrases ad nauseum: low-level fruit or low-hanging fruit, and ton of things. He always says ton, a ton of conversation. We're going to get into a ton of things, a ton. He likes the word ton. And we'll get into that conversation. We'll get into that conversation. And he repeats ad nauseum. And both of these guys were defending Kyle Shanahan, just ad nauseum. When a caller called up, several callers, in fact, and criticized Kyle Shanahan, legitimately with some various points that were actually quite lucid and quite real, they got cut. And they made fun of the caller, which I found to be disgusting and amazing. Not really sophisticated. Here you are, a flagship radio station, and I get the fact that they're there and they got to show some degree of civility and all that, and not, behold some of these typical, as they put it, sports talk fans, as if these fans are ill-educated and don't know anything. To some degree, they're right. But I've heard criticism on the national shows. Some of it is, granted, knee-jerk. But in any event, my point locally is that KNBR was its usual crappy, non-philosophical, mostly the typical lousy coverage, including after the game, the post-mortem. And, some of this is a little bit biased on my own part, because I didn't expect anything new. I didn't expect any kind of ingenuity and education regarding about what took place. You want to talk about your trip in Las Vegas and maybe, having fun with a friendly announcer, a female at your hotel. Let's be entertaining and, bring it on. But we didn't learn any kind of insight. We didn't get any kind of what took place, before the game, during the week. It was just a bunch of guys basically having fun, which is, again, that's cool. Human touch. Wonderful. But I don't want to hear about somebody intimating about their drinking and about maybe if they got laid or not, or, oh God, it's Vegas. I've been there. I know it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't have preferred it this time around. It looked great on TV, but I don't like crowds lately. I don't like buying $27 hot dogs and the price gouging and the humanity at the airport. I could only imagine. But that's a side story. The various television shows with regards to the news people, this is on another front. I kind of skipped that. I know KPIX had a crew there, as did NBC Bay Area on a lesser front. Channel 7 basically sent just their sports team. Same with KTVU. I avoided that. Radio-wise, pretty much KNBR had a scant listen to 95.7 The Game, which is the FM station in the Bay Area, the all-sports station. Their morning show, same old stuff, the usual shenanigans, not very funny, and guys taking pictures of themselves with their credential in the stadium. Okay, that's a lot of relevance to that too. So I wasn't a proud connoisseur of what the Bay Area fandom and people like myself wanted to see or learn. Good luck with that. I hope you watch me and enjoy me and tell your friends, your enemies, your spouses, your ex-wives, ex-girlfriends, ex-husbands about Rich Lieberman. I am here pretty much every day on YouTube. I also plan a major announcement soon about the written blog on 415 Media. If you like what you see, I am 100% funded by you, the readers and the listeners and the watchers on YouTube. So please donate, contribute, allow me to give you the insight that you look forward to every day, and enables me to pay for my bills, which enable me to go on YouTube and to do things and to give you insight and opinion and scoops every now and then. So just go to rich.lieberman@gmail.com and make a pledge or a donation or a contribution. You should also hit my PayPal donate button on the right side of my blog. And I want to thank again all you sponsors who have donated, people like the great San Jose South Bay DJ Steve Shower and Kevin C in Daly City and Nick and people, you know who you are, Roe and Jeffrey Cox and Ed. And who am I leaving out? You know who you are, and I'm gonna shout you guys out eventually, all of you and all that. But I want to thank you for giving me the forum here, or responsible for giving me the forum, and I appreciate all of you who may or may not agree with me, but like watching me or like reading me when I write and sponsoring me, because I don't do advertisers, because I don't want to be beholden to corporate spin and people telling me how to behave. One of the things I enjoy on YouTube is the fact that I can say what I want. You may disagree, but you like the fact that I give you honesty in my book, and I give you analysis devoid of people telling me what to say or what to write. Keep it up. Have a great Monday. Enjoy your day. And thanks for watching me.